This is where the buck stops.
He's got answers.
Futs has got all the answers for us. Former NHL executive. Name on the Stanley Cup. Come on.
You got a
Futs.
contract in front of you if Dubas doesn't take his, Futs, or what?
In a heartbeat. Can I meet you guys in like 2 hours and I'll go over what I really want to say?
Listen, you've been
Nice
around a long time. End of the season, you've got your clean up the locker day, meet with the players. You basically, the whole idea is to just get out as quickly and as quietly as possible. Anything but happened yesterday with Kyle Dubas's comments, correct?
I mean, and I'll tell you, in 2012, the two best press conferences ever were in 2012, 2014, because nobody can ask you anything that's going to piss you off because you're so hungover from holding on to the Stanley Cup that it doesn't matter. But, I mean, I just felt yesterday it was and first of all, I have a lot of respect for Kyle and as what he said as a family man, okay, because that's true. And it obviously means a lot to him, and it's always meant a lot to him. But I just think where that thing was at, it was like there was really no to evaluate whether what actually happened with the team. Should there be? It's like, okay, I'm going to go home and decide over the next couple of days whether I'm coming back. And there was never any really thought to are these guys coming back based on what happened with the team. And I've been a huge proponent, as you guys. I mean, Bourne, I've sat beside you all year and I've talked to you guys, but some of these moves I loved them, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not like I'm not one of these guys that sits and throws, and then says, "Oh well, he just did a bad job." I mean, but we called him out on some things, like whether it was, Richie last year or Matt Murray this year, but he found ways he made up for his own errors, right? Samsonov came through and they had walls, so they never really became issues for how the team performed. But I don't see the difference other than some slight verbiage between last year saying, hey, we're willing to do anything to make any trade to make this team better, but we're not just going to make a trade for making a trade for the sense of making a trade. So to switch the verbiage to saying, hey, if it's going to help us win a Stanley Cup, everything's on the table, I don't see any difference in what was said from last year to this year.
Just say, Futs, like that should be the case every single year, right? Like there should be no year.
It's an easy. It's not, but where you're not going to do what's necessary or what's have you. But I mean, I just look at. I really think at some point it's easy to say, and I would want Marner back on an extension and Matthews back on an extension, but I also think that at some point there's got to be like what is wrong with sitting down and having that conversation with John Tavares about where things are at. And just, it's not like where you just get asked a question by a reporter and everybody goes, oh, see, he says he's staying, so that's fine.
Right.
Oh man, you got a picture with the pajamas. Come on, he's not going anywhere. Like, this is huge pieces of decisions that have to be made. And again, we're not behind closed doors to find out they are, but it certainly sounded to me like everybody wants to be back. Everybody loves each other. We're a real tight group. Everybody that comes in, certainly when you have someone like Ryan O'Reilly, and I get it from Giordano and I get it from, Shenner, guys that I've been responsible with, that it's clearly the Taj Mahal of NHL, of sports organizations. Like, you get treated like pure gold. You've got Bobby Hastings. You've got the best of everything there. They travel first class. They eat first class. That building is like a mecca. So it is an incredible place to play. Yeah, there's added pressure, but think, first of all, they're all rich already. Right. So fortunately and that's they've earned the money, right? Connor McDavid, same thing. He hasn't won, but they've had huge contracts. We were fortunate enough, and as I've said in the past, we paid Kopitar's and Doughty's after they won for winning. That's not the case anymore. And that's not just with the Leafs. So it's an issue is what it is. But I just like to see more passion, more accountability. For somebody, a Toronto-born kid, I interviewed years ago with Shanny. And it was very, it was more just probably one of the most privileged days of my life. But, they were going with Lou Lamoriello, and that's like you just tip your hat. You're going with Lou Lamoriello. But just even thinking about being the general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs is something that just shakes you to the core. And it should matter enough. And if somebody's in that position, and isn't all in or has some questions, then you make a move. I didn't think that press conference was an incredibly good look on the powers that be, as emotional and forthright as it was. I mean, all the players come out and say that they love Kyle, and I know they do because they tell me the same thing.
Well, what's not to love? Look at the contracts he gave me. Look at the warm blanket he's put around me for all these years.
Well, and you know what? He's protected them in the news media. I mean, he protected, obviously, he even said he protects them when he's in a press box and and a fan wants to chirp. But at some point, they got to step up to the table and protect him. And that didn't happen. And it didn't happen against a team that they were much better than. And Tampa almost got to them, which it's beyond me how you can be that good in something. And maybe that comes back on Keefe, that these guys didn't find a way to, especially after taking out Tampa when they weren't at their best, be better than the Florida Panthers. And they went into Florida with weeks left in the season when Florida was fighting to just get in the playoffs with their B team and wipe them out with Florida. So they should have been stomped out early. They weren't. And now the same questions are being answered. And I personally think that there does have to be some change, and certainly some change within the lineup. And I mean, obviously, I've shared I've shared a lot of my thoughts with Borny, and I still think there's a lot of things that you can do with this team to change the look of it and not give up on your entire core, but just have a whole completely different look to your team moving forward with regards to a consistent compete level.
We're talking to Mike Futa, former Los Angeles King executive, Stanley Cup champion, Sportsnet hockey analyst. So, Futa, I want to pick up on what you just said. There's many ways to have a different look here. And you mentioned Tavares, and 99% of the people would say he's on the back three on an 18-hole course, and that he makes $11 million for 2 more years, has a no move. That makes it an unmovable contract. But what I hear from you is you saying not necessarily.
Okay, and here, Kyper, I'm just going to throw money. Okay, and it's not, for me, it's not water cooler stuff. If you can't just move the money, right, then shift the chairs on the deck. Okay, there's a guy playing defense in Los Angeles that makes $11 million. That's a right shot D. Okay, that's from the area. That, hey, is there any chance? And God, I don't know, that John Tavares and his wife, they totally wanted to move to Los Angeles before, that John Tavares wants to go down. They're a competitive team that could win a cup. That John Tavares goes down and helps the Los Angeles Kings, and Drew Doughty comes home to Toronto. What kind of different look do you have there? And I'm not saying you're just going to convince a team to move out $10 million or something like that, but I think that that's the kind of deal that clearly feels you've still got a guy. They've got equal amount. I mean, I think Doughty's got an extra year in his deal, but you got a guy that's still playing 28, 30 minutes a night in Los Angeles, fills a gap here, that grew up with the same, love of Toronto. And again, it's just a thought. It's
a good thought.
we like it here.
What do you think of that thought, Sammy?
I'm not just. So I'm not been sitting. I'm not.
My
I'm
ears
not
are
sitting around
perked up.
Playing. Well, I'm not playing hockey pool stuff. And you know what? All it takes is for somebody to say no. But it's certainly worth asking because it changes dramatically. And you know what? If you offend somebody, so you're still rich. We still love you. But we got to do something here. We didn't win.
Yeah.
I love John Tavares. I did not like him acknowledging how, and I mean, what is his name? Buckus just grilling. But I didn't like the fact he was talking about how strong he was away from the puck in the Florida series. Like, that's not good enough from your captain. Right? And he's a class act all the way through and through. And he also said how proud he is to be the captain and what a pure honor it is to be the captain. Well, for me, I mean, it's not, I wouldn't necessarily just throw it over to Mitch or to Austin, or I'd find a way to get the guy that come across from me as the captain, like the true blue captain, was Ryan O'Reilly. Just everything about him oozed the right type of leadership. So, I mean, whatever. I think you can find ways to make some creative things where this team, you still keep your big horses in, but you go out and you find some pieces. And it's easy for me because I'm not under contract with anybody, so I'm not tampering with my thought process. So I'm just throwing out there some different ideas of how you can, I think, make this team just as good, but you're not going to ever be questioning at the end of the day, where was their compete when it mattered the most? And not that they don't care, but everybody, it's like an off-color thing when you say this team, we did everything possible to get tougher and grittier at the trade deadline. Now, what are we saying Florida did? They out-muscled and out-toughed us in the first few games. So we didn't really do it. We did it. We did it to the best of our ability, and I thought he did a great job. But I loved watching Achari play, right? And I love these guys finishing their checks. And Luke Shen, okay? How good was Luke Shen?
Yeah.
Okay, but for me, Luke Shen comes in, making $850 or some, Bourne. So here's a guy that comes home, reinvents himself, and somewhere along the way, you decided that Connor Timmins was worth 3 years at $1.1 million. When he's in your 9-hole in the press box, and now you're like, money's so important. Where are we going to find the money to get Luke Shen back? There's just some stuff that's just a little baffling. But onwards and up. I know they all want to. I mean, it was so funny talking to Schenner and even Simmer, how Pride. I mean, obviously Simmer had a tough year with his minutes and stuff and his relationship with Kyper, but it's so incredibly nice to hear these guys talk about how proud and to be a Toronto Maple Leaf in every aspect of the way. So then, why right now is this team not thinking, if you're already a gazillionaire, what would my legacy be if we could ever properly get this done? Mm-hmm. And it's not, I'm taking a couple of days to think about whether I still want to do this.
Well, it's interesting when you think about the guys you're talking about that came in and provided that element of leadership and grit and whatever. It's O'Reilly, it's Achari, it's Shen, it's all these guys from the outside who are now free agents. On the other hand, the team didn't score enough, Futs, right? 7 straight games where they only scored twice. You know,
it's hard to, Bourne, it's so hard to, it's hard to imagine, right? When you think about it, because they've got guys that notoriously can do that. But obviously this nice kid is found money. Like, this kid's going to be an exceptional hockey player, right? Who you probably got to think is going to, you don't want to overdo it as we tend to do, but he's probably got to be a 15 to 20 guy at his age, like by automatic.
Oh, yeah.
With who's going to play. And that could be very low. But, I mean, there's other players out there and I know the kind of your Nylander head stuff, but there's some things around where you can go into free offense, and you're not going to take that, incredible skill set that have away, but you're also going to allow them to produce more and produce goals. There's goals out there be having. The part that and this is the part that really sucks for me, is because I'm an English major, is when I sit here at night with my glass of wine trying to work the cap, and I don't have anybody from the office with me.
Bring me
really
Trim.
Trying. But I am looking at stuff that says, if I'm right, is that, and that's the one thing I did catch from Kyle the other too, is it sounds like I think there's a lot more cap space than is being publicly let known. In just a sense that if you do buy out Murray, I believe you get a $4 million or 4.3 cap, like off your cap next year. If you, I believe respectfully, because I love this kid to death, that if Jake Muzzin comes in and goes on LTIR because he's not going to play again, that I believe there's another $6 million that you have to spend.
Yeah.
So it's not just like dropping a bucket. And I'm not saying you turn around and throw it all at Bunting or whoever it is, but I think there's some collective ways to do it. And the other area that I would address right out is somehow, whether I had to do it, I know I've probably said this name to you, Bourne, 1,000 times, I would be overpaying for Nick Delorier or somebody in a heartbeat that comes in, and God bless Simmer, but if you don't think he can do it anymore, someone that doesn't allow your stars to have to take face washes and crap, and Schenner does it, but Schenner's not a fighter. He'll do it, but he's not going to hurt anybody. He's just going to do it because he's a great teammate. I'd bring somebody in that just gets people a little bit worried about touching our multimillionaires.
Particularly in the regular season. I love
the only problem is if you're Achari and you want a raise off your 1.5 because you led the playoffs in hits
by 20,
chances are he might eat up that money.
How old's he though? 31, yeah.
Yeah, but there's still there's some interesting ways to move it around. Now again, I get a little bit. And I remember we're talking about it. But I don't know why they need to sign Yarncroc for so long. But that's everybody. For every, I bottom line is I think that Kyle Dubas' good decisions have far outweighed his bad decisions. And that's certainly what you want out of your general manager. And he's made some tough ones, but I mean, I still think you can grease this team up by not spending big money and spread it around a little more and just have a little bit more playoff ready roster than a team that we are going to once again get so excited about 140 points, whatever they get in the regular season. And then it just seems to change when it's time to strap them on for real.
Futes, if you're saving 4.3 on the cap with Matt Murray, are you okay just to hand it over to Samsonov and go Wall Samsonov next year?
I wouldn't go that high with Samsonov. I think he's left him. I'm sure Pat Morris wouldn't want to hear that, but I think he enjoys it here enough that doesn't require that big a bump.
3.5, 3.7.
Wouldn't hurt me. Wouldn't hurt for a couple of years. Hey, just to say we are a great spot. We love you here. You're going to be working with. I really love the Wall kid, but prove it to us. Just prove you can stay healthy. Just prove you can stay healthy before we give you the money.
Might have to give him an extra 100 just to deal with the traffic. Did you hear his comment?
He doesn't like it?
Yeah,
in his defense, it sucks and it's going to get worse.
You like Toronto? No, I hate the traffic.
Oh, didn't I say that too? He was here for like a day and he's like, oh.
Oh, my God. Well, they should go down. Well, they can't go to LA then. Holy smokes.
Fair.
Here's a free app of Waze.
Figure it out.
Figure it out, buddy.